Good morning. This is Scott Christian. I'm the Associate Dean at the Alaska College of Education. The purpose of this tutorial is to walk through the Student Teaching Observation Tool, also known as STOT. This instrument will be used for all of our initial licensure candidates in special education, secondary education, and elementary. This tool is based on the InTask standards, which are also the basis of our national accreditation. So it's very important that we gather data in these different domains, also known as areas of knowledge. If you look at the right-hand column, it lists all of the items. There are 34 items on the Student Teaching Observation Tool, and they are aligned with the 4 content or knowledge areas of STOT: the learner and learning, content knowledge, instructional practice, and professional responsibility. These domains are also linked to the Alaska Beginning Teacher Standards. There's a crosswalk for that. And they're also very closely aligned with the Marzano and Danielson evaluation models. So a lot of the criteria and indicators that you see on the tool will be familiar to you. In order to have valid data, it's very important that we implement this instrument with the same protocols. So for all initial licensure candidates, STOT will be implemented by host teachers and university supervisors during the student teaching experience as a formative assessment. So the university supervisor and the host teacher can decide how that happens, but there is one formative assessment instrument available for each initial licensure candidate, and that should be implemented with a time set aside to discuss it so that the student has feedback. All initial licensure program candidates across programs will be evaluated using STOT by the university supervisor during the last 4 weeks of the final student teaching semester as a summative assessment. So that final assessment should happen in the last 4 weeks. Now, with travel and scheduling and field trips and all the things that happen in schools, if that needs to happen a little bit before that, that's fine. But the intent is that it happens in the last 4 weeks of student teaching. STOT will be used to evaluate student teachers during observations lasting between 60 and 100 minutes. There could be multiple lessons and iterations during this time period. However, it's very important that the evaluation period is at least 60 minutes and not more than 100 minutes. We need to be consistent across all of our programs. Candidates will be scored NA, not observed, when an indicator is not observed during the evaluation. There will also be a conference with the student teacher, face-to-face or virtual, where there will be follow-up to the indicators labeled as C, requiring a conference. Just to review that one more time because it's so important. If you are evaluating a student and you don't see a particular indicator, it is okay to NA. That is our theme. That's our motto. If you don't see it, don't rate it. And having a not observed does not negatively impact the student's evaluation. We just need to be real straight about that. So you will see with each item in STOT, and we're going to log in there in just a minute, you will see O for observation. Those are things that you see in the classroom. C for conference, and those are things you can discuss in the conference, and it's fine to rate them based on that conversation. And then CO for conference or observation. Okay, we will log into live text, which is our assessment management interface, and we'll take a look at STOT. So we'll pause for just a moment. Okay, welcome to Live Text. Live Text is the database that we use to manage all of our assessments for initial licensure candidates. You should have a login to Live Text. If you don't, please contact your university supervisor or the Alaska College of Education office, and we can assist you with that. So I am going to log into the Live Text system as a supervisor. I am a supervisor. I'll be supervising secondary students this year. So I log in. And once I get there, this will look a little bit different for host teachers, and it'll look a little bit different for supervisors depending on what your roles are. But basically, everyone needs to go to the field experience. And here you will see the candidates who are assigned to you. So Spike Whale is the UAS mascot. So he has agreed to be a test case for this tutorial. If you look here, these are the assessments that are assigned to Spike. And it's important to note that there is a formative and a summative assessment, as we discussed in the intro, for both the STOT and the professional characteristics assessment, and there's a separate tutorial for that. It's very important that you select the correct assessment. So if this is for feedback, if it's a formative assessment, then you select formative. If this is the end of the semester, end of the experience, then you select the summative for the evaluation. So let's go ahead and enter STOT. I know this text looks small on the tutorial. You can make it full screen, do what you need to do, but hopefully you can see this okay. So as the evaluator, on the left is the criteria, and you can see O, as we talked about, C and O. O is for observation. And this criteria indicator is supports student learning through developmentally appropriate instruction. And just so you know, proficient is our target. By the end of the student teaching assessment experience, the student should be proficient in most, if not all, of these indicators. So let's look at proficient. The teacher candidate implements developmentally appropriate instruction that accounts for learners' strengths, interests, and needs. During a 100-minute lesson, you should see evidence of that. If the students are engaged, if they're not frustrated, if there's clear directions, if the learning is relevant, all those things, then it's developmentally appropriate. It's not at a level that's over where the students are or too childlike, too developmentally low for where the students are. It should be appropriate and challenging. So we just select the radio button there. And then for each item, there are comments. And when the student reviews this, when the candidate reviews this assessment, they can see those comments. So let's say the small group activity showed a variety of developmental levels and reading levels appropriate for middle school or whatever. So you have an opportunity to comment, and the student will see that. Accounts for differences in students' prior knowledge. Let's say we didn't see that. You didn't see them actively having a little pre-quiz or a pre and post or having a little discussion to determine students' prior knowledge. It's okay to NA. So we select NA on that. It was not observed. The next area is learning differences. Uses knowledge of students' socioeconomic, cultural, and ethnic differences to meet learning needs. To be proficient at this, the teacher candidate demonstrates through knowledge that learners are individuals with differences in their backgrounds as well as their approaches to learning and performance. So this is something you might see in one-on-one interactions with students. You might see it in the way that lessons are designed, the content of the material, whether that's reading material or some kind of media. You can also see this through discussions where the teacher is making connections and showing, demonstrating a knowledge of the student's context. To be distinguished, the teacher candidate anticipates individual learning needs by proactively differentiating instruction using knowledge of learners' socioeconomic, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds. Now, it's human nature. There will be candidates who really want everything to be at this level. And that's what they're going to look at. But really, our focus in terms of feedback and conversations about the assessment is that all students become proficient. And, as we move along, they can certainly move towards distinguished. But the goal is to get there during the student teaching semester to become proficient. Exhibits fairness and belief that all students can learn. So this assessment with all of the indicators are available as a PDF on our Alaska College of Education website under STOT. So you can take more time, you can print that out if you want to and use it as a paper tool, keep it on your desktop, whatever works for you. I'm not going to walk through all items right now. I'm just going to kind of give you a sense of how this works and what the different areas of learning are, areas of knowledge. Creates a safe and respectful environment for learners. Traditionally, that's a real strength for our candidates. Looks very different at different levels. Structures a classroom environment that promotes student engagement. Clearly communicates expectations for appropriate student behavior. Okay, we'll move down to content knowledge. Effectively teaches subject matter. So if you are noticing that maybe a student has a gap in terms of geography, grammar, writing proficiency, history, whatever the content is that the student is teaching, this would be a place where you could reflect that. So underdeveloped, which is at the far right side, is the teacher candidate displays minimal content knowledge. Instructional practices indicate little awareness of learning progressions, and practices are too often incomplete or inaccurate for the content. So this is a place where we're checking to make sure that they have the content knowledge that they need to teach effectively. Proficient, the teacher's instructional practices indicate understanding of content knowledge and learning progressions. Practices are complete and appropriate for the content. Of course, it would look very different in different content areas. Applications of content connects core content to relevant real-life experiences and learning tasks. Designs activities where students engage with subject matter from a variety of perspectives. Assessment, this is something we work very hard on all of our, in all of our programs. To be proficient, the teacher candidate uses multiple assessments that align with the learning targets. And of course, in order to do that, those targets need to be explicit and accessible to students in the classroom. Provides students with meaningful feedback to guide next steps in learning. Now this one you'll see has O for observation. The one before it was conference or observation, and the next one is also conference or observation. Uses appropriate data sources to identify student learning needs. I really think in order to determine this, you're probably going to need to ask that specific question in a conference, because that's not something that you would necessarily see during the lesson. The teacher candidate documents, analyze, and interprets student assessment data, gathering using multiple methods to identify student learning needs. So we actually look at that indicator through STOT and also through the teacher work sample, which you'll become familiar with during the course of the year. Planning for instruction. When a student is going to be evaluated using STOT, whether it's a formative assessment or the summative assessment, there should be evidence of planning. So different programs might approach that differently. In secondary, we ask for a lesson plan. And that might look different from school to school, district to district, but the supervisor, the host teacher, should clarify what evidence of planning means, and that should be given to the evaluator prior to the STOT evaluation, some kind of evidence of planning. Instructional strategies, various instructional strategies to engage learners. Professional learning and ethical practices. I believe that all of these can be seen through conference or observation. And the reality is a lot of these are going to happen during the conference. So when you schedule an observation and you're going to evaluate a student using STOT, formative or summative, you should also schedule that meeting afterwards. And if you're off-site, that can happen through Zoom, Google Hangouts, whatever's available to you, even the telephone, somehow to make sure you have that session to debrief. Leadership and collaboration, very important. So let's say that you're doing your STOT evaluation, and at 45 minutes, that group of students has a break, or they leave and come back later. That's fine. You can save the evaluation and then return to it in the same way that we access this today through the student in live text. And then when you're done, you hit submit assessment, but do not hit submit until it's complete. So however that 60 to 100 minutes happens, after you've fully completed the evaluation, and it's perfectly fine to use NA, that's when you hit the submit button. This evaluation is very important to us at the Alaska College of Education. It's very important to your students. There will be another tutorial like this for students, but we also encourage you to sit down with students and walk through that so that everybody's on a level playing field. Thank you.